6 o'clock, call this meeting to order. If you can, will you please join me for the moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for coming. First, we're going to have County Administrator Bruce Messelt, who will show a PowerPoint presentation about tonight's activity.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. I thought we'd do these fairly quick and just to get to question and answers, but typically we do a little bit of orientation for the community. Just one note, we are live streaming tonight. It's a new practice for us. So when you do open the public comment period, we do have the opportunity of if anybody online would like to comment, they can use the Teams raise hand and Keisha will cue them in for you. So just a little bit different than we've done in the past. Tonight is the statutorily required truth and taxation hearing regarding the proposed 2025 budget and levy. After tonight, the slide deck will be placed online, so if folks are interested in the information, it will be available. Real quick again, the purpose of our budget, of course, is to advance the mission of the county, that we focus on accessible and cost-effective services that support our quality of life. That duality between the services we provide and acknowledgement that they are primarily tax-based is really important. Specifically, that's why we meet tonight to discuss that. Topics we're going to cover briefly include property market valuations, the budget process, the proposed budget and levy, how that reflects in the expenditures and revenues, a little bit on property taxes in general, the refund program at the state, as well as our own OpenGov, and then finally public comments and questions. I would note for tonight that we do have two additional staff members in with us today. First is Michelle Moen. Michelle will wave so everybody knows who she is. Michelle is the county assessor, and she and her staff are here to address any issues or concerns regarding the valuations of properties upon which property taxes are based. And then Lorraine Rupp is here as well. Lorraine's going to wave. Lorraine is the auditor treasurer. She's the tax collector, and so she can answer any questions you have regarding the process of paying taxes. And then in addition to me, Dan Weber is here. Dan will wave. And Dan and I are kind of the budget folks who put together the budget for the County Board of Commissioners. So if there are questions that we would recommend be referred to specific staff, just know that they're available tonight, or you can schedule a time at a later date to discuss with them. So on to market value. In Minnesota, market values are the determination upon which a tax rate is applied to a property. They're established by professional standards and state laws. Again, tonight, we have the assessors here to talk about how your property is valued, the comparables, and any questions you might have. This is not the time to question necessarily the actual property valuation, but Michelle can go over the calendar on how those are done. And again, if it doesn't work out tonight, but you do have a follow-on, we'll make sure you have contact information. One thing nice in Minnesota, and this did change recently, is the homestead market exclusion. These are for properties that you own and live in. It does give you a tax exclusion. In 2024, the value was at $76,000 and went up to $413,800. Maximum credit was 40% of the market value at the lower end, and then up to zero at $413,800. The state legislature did raise this year, and the exclusion grew to a starting point of $90,000 for that maximum, and going up to $517,200. As a result, there are several properties that are seeing a larger market value exclusion this year. The other thing that we have to note, of course, is as the value of homes go up, we are seeing more and more homes drop into a higher tax rate or class rate. If a home is below $500,000, the tax capacity rate is 1.0%. If it's over $500,000, the tax capacity is actually 1.25%. So that can create a double whammy for folks. If the house goes up in value, of course, the tax percentage is applied against the value, but the rate itself can go up. And if that is confusing for folks, again, I would encourage you to catch a time with Michelle to address that. A little bit about our budget process. This is actually the culmination of the preparation for the 2025 budget, not the beginning. We actually start in January and February with strategic priorities, move into budget discussions with the county board in March, start working at the department level in April, May, and June. We then present to the county board in July and August a proposed budget. They make adjustments and fine-tuning, and then in September, we're required by law to set a preliminary levy, which can go down but not up. And then from October through December, the board directs any additional fine-tunings to the budget. Then we present tonight's truth and taxation, and by the end of the year, the board is required to adopt the 2025 budget. A little bit about those priorities. The county board has a strategic plan that was extended to the start of 2025 that focuses on those pillars you can see on the left, the 5 pillars, 4 of which are external in terms of healthy, safe, and livable communities, economic growth, partnerships and informed community, fiscally responsible government, and then organizational excellence for how we carry out those duties. A couple of things to note about challenges that do impact our budget. The county continues to grow in terms of population, and that does have an increasing demand for services. A lot of our services are population-based. Others are need-based, and as the population grows, the needs of the population can also increase. We are also tracking very closely the economic impact of Sherburne closing. The first unit actually closed late last year, and 2 more units will be closing between now and 2030. That has a potential impact of up to 10% of our tax base, and you'll see the first impact of that tonight. In addition, like all of our homes and vehicles, we have aging equipment and infrastructure. We maintain about 40% of the roads and bridges in the county, in addition to facilities, fleets, and technology that has to be maintained. Of course, like any service organization, employee salaries and benefits become a cost factor, and inflation. Just like at our homes, we see the inflationary impact on goods and services, fuel, and pretty much anything else we buy. A couple other budget drivers. Our 12-year population increase is, you can see, over 1% of growth per year. We're now pushing 103,000 folks in the county. That growth continued, and you can see we are one of the fastest growing counties in the state of Minnesota. In fact, we're 3rd. So a growing population has oftentimes growing needs. A couple other drivers, our tax base. One of the things we like to do is try to make sure that we track new construction because it gives us an indication of economic health. And you can see generally we've been adding quite a bit of taxable value to our communities, including in 2025, we're looking at adding a 16.5 of commercial and industrial tax, which does pay a different tax rate than homes, out of $168 million. In addition, the average residential values increased approximately about 0.5%, and the average commercial and multifamily and industrial facilities increased in value by about 4%. However, Sherco Unit 2 came officially off the tax books. That was about a loss of $60 million in value. That's no longer taxable. Switching to our budget and levy summary, in the 25 budget, we have a total budget of just over $184 million. However, I want to note for the board and for the community, this includes a one-time major road and bridge project of approximately $50 million. That is going to be the new US 169 County State Aid Highway 4 interchange in Zimmerman. The good news is that's almost completely non-levy funded. That means non-local tax dollars. But when you look at our budget, you go, wow, it really grew. Our levy didn't grow that much, but our total budget will for 1 year. The recommended levy is $62.7 million, $765,982. It's an increase of 3.99% over the 2024 levy. A little bit of history. You can see in the chart the average levy increase over the last 12 years has been about 3.45%. The actual tax rate, because we've been growing in value more than the levy, has been a decrease in our tax rate by almost 3% per year, and our tax capacity has been growing at 6.67% per year. What I also like to do is adjust that for inflation, and you can see on the right that the average levy per person in the county, when adjusted for inflation, has actually decreased from 2014 in terms of actual dollar value. And so we try to run a very lean organization, but when you just look at the levy amounts and factor in inflation, it does look like it's growing, and of course it is. But if we adjust and look at to the true costs of government, it's been very, very flat for the last 10 years. Looking at it a little differently, in the blue bars, you'll see the levy, and you can see it grow over the last 10 years. In the orange bars, if you adjust that for inflation, you can see our levy has been staying actually very flat. And then if you add the per capita, the green line is the amount of levy per capita asked per resident, but adjusted for inflation is the blue line. And again, you can see it stayed flat for the last 12 years. Looking just at the tax rate, again, because we are a growing county, we're very fortunate that the actual tax rate has decreased an average of 2.82% over the last decade plus. What that means is if your home is not increasing in value above that tax rate, you will be one of the folks who actually will pay less taxes because the tax rate is going down. Looking statewide, we're very proud here to note that we are the 9th lowest per capita taxed county in the state of Minnesota. And you can see some of our counterpart counties, including Stearns, Isanti, and Benton, who are on that list, and some of the other ones are higher. So the statewide average is $727 per capita, and we're at just slightly over $610 per capita.
That's out of 87.
Out of 87 counties, correct. And traditionally, we try to stay in what we call that top 10 leanest counties in terms of tax. The change from 2024 also reflects that. You can see 3.99% levy increase. That's the 16th lowest increase in the state this year. The average is 6.42%. I do note for the board and the community, some places will report 4% levy. That's because sometimes they include the lid levies in that, so it goes up just slightly. But we have our levy control of 3.99%. And again, you can see our counterpart counties there and where they're at. I would note, in particular, when we look at, like, for instance, Benton and Stearns, who typically have been right with us in terms of per capita, theirs are going up significantly. Isanti continues to be competitive with us in terms of those low rates.
And Bruce, for the audience and those online, can you say what is a LID?
Thank you. LID stands for the Lake Improvement Districts. We have 2 lake improvements districts in Sherburne County, and they are limited taxing districts for benefits or improvements to the lakes. They are geographically designed. Typically, it's the shoreland owners, but it can also be those who contribute to the watershed of the lakes, and they are taxed by a board which proposes a levy or a property tax to do improvements to the lake. Their budgets do come to this county board for final approval. This year, we had 1 lake improvement district tax go down, and our new lake improvement district, the tax went up. Greg, go ahead. Oh, we'll let them in there. Do you want to pop the door there?
That's one of my staff.
Oh, that's okay. Give them a hard time. Tell them to quit peeking through the window. So,
Okay.
all right, we should embarrass them. Who is it?
Dave.
Come on, Dave.
Come on in, Dave.
Oh, I tell you, you know. All right, a little bit else on property tax or levy and tax increase. I did note for you briefly. You can see our 12-year average levy. Again, 3.45% compared to the averages around the area. So right in line with Stearns and Benton, and lower than Chisago, Isanti, and Wright. But our population growth, you can see, is again one of the highest, including Isanti and Wright. So pretty lean on the levy, while our service base is going up. And finally, just a summary for our tax base. What this all means, trying to simplify it down, is that the average homeowner with the proposed levy increase would see an approximately $2.50 per month increase in the county portion of their tax bill. Now, we all know we have school district taxes and maybe city or township taxes. You may be in one of those lake improvement districts. We are responsible for our tax, and so in this case, you can see a home that's 2024 value is $355,000. Now, with the increase in value, we estimate at $357,000. Putting on that declining tax rate, you can see the county tax would go from $1,280 to $1,309. Pretty lean, but again, any tax increase is something that we want to be very cognizant of. I noted that unfortunately you can't just look at the county tax. There are others that added on. So we do look at our internal communities and what's going on there. This is the best information we have at the time, and you can see some decrease in levies, including in East St. Cloud and Big Lake School District. The school district is probably because of a retirement of a debt. And then you can see some increases, including the city of Clear Lake, city of Princeton, city of Zimmerman, and the like. And so those get added to your total tax bill. Again, we're responsible for that top line, 3.99%, or if you're in a lid, about 4%. A little bit about county financing. When we talk about this, we usually talk about where tax dollars come from and where they go. So the federal government and the state government tax income, we do not. Sales taxes are imposed at the state level. They're not at the federal level. And most county governments only collect sales tax as it relates to road and bridge projects. There are some exceptions. For instance, in Stearns County, the voters recently approved a sales tax to be used to build a new public law enforcement center, so a jail and courtrooms. And then you can see property taxes. Typically, property taxes have been the primary revenue source for counties, school districts, and cities. But recently, the state of Minnesota has started collecting a portion of your property tax as well. And then there are authorizations for what's called a wheelage tax. This is the tax you pay when you register your vehicle. And it can only be used again for roads, bridges, and for transit needs. We do have a wheelage tax here in Sherburne County as well. So where do we get our revenues? Predominantly property taxes, but we also get state and federal aid, grants, charges for services, that wheelage tax, and that local option sales tax. How do we determine where to spend it? There are federal requirements that are mandated upon us. There are state laws and state requirements, which we'll often call mandates or underfunded or unfunded mandates. And as an arm of the state, we are required to carry those out, even if the money doesn't come with the mandate. There are agreements or specific programs that we agree to that we then must fund. There are discretionary activities that the county board can make decisions upon, such as, for instance, some of our parks funding, some of our road projects where it's strictly local funds. And then there are designated agencies that we fund, such as the library, the Soil and Water Conservation District, the University of Minnesota Extension, and the Agricultural Society and Historical Society. So what does this all mean? Wrapping it up, I think this is probably that elevator speech. It's pretty simple. When we talk about it, it's a Jerry Maguire world, so it's show me the money. This is where we get our money. Half of our revenues, as you can see, are brought in by, well, next year it'll be more than half, but typically about half of our money will come in from levy. Next year, it's not that much because of that big state and federal funding for the project. But when we look at that, state and federal funding and then levy makes up the vast majority of our revenues. So it's almost like two crutches. So we're very dependent upon the local tax, and we're equally dependent upon state and federal funds to carry out our programs. You don't see a lot of other types of activities. When we look at expenditures, it's really what I like to call the three publics: public safety, public health and human services, and public works. On a typical year, 75 cents out of every dollar that we spend are in those three buckets. Public safety, we all understand. It's what our sheriff does, it's what law enforcement does, it's operating our jail, it's assisting our courts, and then if we add in the attorney function to prosecute, you get the idea of what public safety is. Public works, we also understand. That's roads and bridges. That's paving the roads in the summer and plowing the roads in the winter and making sure our bridges are stable and strong and don't fall down. Public health and human services are all of our social service activities that we do to assist those folks in need. They run the gamut from adults, vulnerable adults, adults with mental disabilities, to families in need, to child protection. All of those activities are typically mandated, and they're very expensive because they're very intensive and they're human-based. And so that runs a significant part of our budget as well. One thing I want to note for the community is we are a service-based organization on a typical year, and next year is not typical again because of that big road and bridge project, but about over half of our budget is personnel-based. The drivers, therefore, as you can imagine, are the programs and mandates that we carry out, cost of living adjustments, if you're in certain unions, steps and grades, and of course the need to compete in the market. Sometimes that market is public to public, like police officer to deputy. Sometimes it's public to private, like nurses or engineers or attorneys. We provide health care and benefits to our employees, and we are required to provide insurance and workers' compensation. And then finally, of course, if they're long-term employees, there's a retirement program and post-employment benefits that add up. Over multiple years, we've been seeing an average of about 1.85% increase in our cost of living adjustments. So typically below or right at the inflationary mark that we tend to think about. For next year, a couple of things. Because we are a growing organization, we are actually adding staff. The nice thing is many of those staff are not dependent upon the local tax to pay for their salaries. So you'll see on the left, staff additions include 5 staff that will be brought in that are not based upon the levy. That includes a mental health co-responder, 2 mental health practitioners, a public health nurse, and a community health coordinator. You can also see that there are some levy impacts for staff, including a highway maintenance operator, a victim services coordinator, a case aide in our clinical unit, and a 1/2 FTE for human resources. However, we're also reducing staff by 3, including 1 fewer custodian, 1 fewer driver's license public service specialist, and 1 half-time position for support for extension. So when we carry that out, we think we've balanced very well on the levy. And then finally, we actually have positions that create revenues and help pay down some of our levy, including 3 mental health professionals, an adult mental health social worker, a development disability social worker, a waiver coordinator, and an aging and assessment lead social worker. Those come in with state or federal grants. The board has approved them, but they've also said that if those grants go away, those positions typically go away. So we don't like to just kind of do a bait and switch and bring people on and then say, oh, now we got to continue to pay them. Putting it a little different way, for every tax dollar that the county collects on behalf of the school districts, the cities, the townships, we do retain about 40 cents of your tax dollar. You can again see where it goes. And again, the big 3 are pointed out to you. Law enforcement, so public safety, public works, and public health and human services. That is the lion's share, and you can see it's basically half or more of the tax of the 40 cents we collect. So those are where we spend your tax dollars. Putting it a little different way, and this is what happens when I'm in Coburn's or someplace else and they see my badge and they say, what do I get for my tax dollar? I have to remember that the average home in Sherburne County is being asked to pay $109 a month next year. Now, I don't know what your cell phone bill is or your cable TV bill is, but $100 is not immaterial. You know, you can calculate and say that's worth me noting. So I have to be able to explain to folks, what do you get for your $100? Guess what? The same 3 buckets: public works, public health and human services, and public safety. There's only one slight difference I want to point out for the board, especially if you add in the attorneys, courts, and community corrections. Basically, that means almost $50 a month is going for public safety. That's because public safety is the most locally funded activity. We get some grants and aids for roads and bridges. We get some grants and aids for health and human services. But Minnesota believes that law enforcement and public safety is a local function, and it's locally funded. Last couple comments. We really want folks to be able to drill down and understand the budget. It doesn't have to be a confusing exercise, so we've invested in something called OpenGov, And this allows any resident, any county commissioner, anybody who's interested, including really smart students from Elk River and Princeton, to look at the budget and actually create a presentation for their class so they just don't use canned slides from the county administrator. Hint, hint. You can go on to OpenGov and you can drill down actually to line items. You see that in the middle, a sample of what our operating budget would look like. You can also then generate graphs. This is what we use to track the spending, what we expect to spend, what we actually spend, and then what the county board looks at both for budgeting as well as for auditing purposes. If it's of interest to you, Minnesota property taxes, the state does have a property tax refund program. We would encourage you to look into it. You can see the criteria there for being eligible for it, but it is helpful for folks who see significant increases in their property taxes. And then finally, the purpose of tonight is to allow the community to share their thoughts and comments on the proposed budget and the levy. We have staff here to assist with specific questions. I would also note that there are other truth and taxation meetings for cities, townships, and schools. And then following tonight, the county board will discuss on the 17th of December the final adoption of the budget and levy. Again, the budget can be changed in next year, but the levy cannot be changed and it cannot go up from what is already proposed. With that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn this microphone back over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Messel. So at this point, we will open up the public comment for tonight. For public comment, please, we're sticking with 3 minutes, I believe. 3-minute comment period. And when you step up to the microphone, please state your name and your address for the record. Does anybody here want to comment?
You might have to ask these students what they think too. So.
They're feeling harassed, I think, at this point in time. Welcome to government. Anybody here want to comment? Is there anybody online that wants to comment?
Chat. Nobody has raised a hand.
Okay, well then one more time. Does anybody here care to comment, or does anyone online care to comment? Hearing none and not being aware of any, at this point we'll close the public comment. Do any commissioners have comments? It was a really good presentation. I think it explained everything very clearly. You know, we have done the best that we can to keep the levy down this year. And I think I think not we so much as the staff has done an excellent job of bringing us the lowest levy that we could get. The percentage we have that is the driver was based on really legislative requirements for staffing that passed in the last 2 years. So we're having to respond to that. But other than that, we've kept it as flat as we could. Does anyone else have any comments?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Commissioner Holtz.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo and thank the staff for their work on the budget, and also the presentation. I thought the presentation tonight was extremely crisp and clear, so I appreciate the work that went into that.
Okay, thank you.
So just, Mr. Chair, also, yes, really want to commend the staff on the work. They really worked hard to get us to this point. So really appreciate the work that they've done. It's not easy, so.
I don't think any of us commissioners take the work that this is as lightly. I think in commending the staff is probably the most important thing, but it falls in our hands. And I think the 3.99 is probably as best what we could do. And the staff diligently gave us that number, and I think that we have to commend them on that.
And I agree with everything that's being said, and also just a comment that we all pay property taxes too, so we totally understand where we want to really keep this as tight as we can, but still provide the services we're mandated to do, so.
All right, thank you very much. Well, if that's all we have for commentary, then this meeting will be closed. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Hey, Bruce.